There comes a time in every person's life when the winds of adversity blow so hard that it feels like the very foundation of your existence is being shaken. You wake up and the weight of uncertainty sits on your chest before your feet even touch the ground. Your thoughts turn to survival, your spirit begins to flicker, and the voice of doubt whispers, maybe I can't make it through this. But let me remind you, you were not born to break. You were not created to shatter at the first sign of resistance. Life in all its chaos doesn't put you in the storm to see you drown. It puts you there to teach you that you already know how to swim. You were born to bend. You were born to adjust, to flex, to absorb the pressure and rise again, taller, wiser, and stronger than before. Look at nature. The trees that survive hurricanes aren't the stiff, rigid ones. They're the ones that bend. When the winds howl and the storms rage, it is the flexible palm that leans with the gusts and remains rooted in the earth. And when the sky is clear, those trees still stand tall, untouched at their core. Why? Because flexibility is not weakness, it is a form of strength that most people forget they possess. You too have that ability within you. You may not always feel it. Pain has a way of disguising your power. It clouds your memory and makes you forget that you've already lived through days you didn't think you'd survive. But strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, try again tomorrow. Sometimes it's in the quiet decision to get out of bed. Sometimes it's in holding your head up when everything around you is trying to pull it down. Life is not designed to be easy, but difficulty is not a death sentence. It's a test, a fire, a crucible. And what do we put in fire? Steel. Because fire refines, fire strengthens, fire burns away what is weak and leaves behind something forged, something solid, something unshakable. That is what adversity does to those who dare to face it head on. That is what hardship does to those who understand they are not victims of circumstance, but students of it. To bend means to make room for growth. It means you learn how to adapt when your plans fall apart. It means you become a master of your emotions instead of a prisoner to them. Life will throw disappointments your way. You will experience loss, betrayal, rejection, and failure. But those things don't define you. What defines you is what you do next. Do you stay down or do you rise up? Do you internalize the storm or do you learn to walk through it with your eyes open, your spine straight, and your fists clenched with determination? There is a hidden strength in those who refuse to quit, not because they never feel fear or doubt, but because they decide to keep moving anyway. The decision to endure, to bend instead of break, is not glamorous. It won't always get applause. It often happens when no one's watching. It happens in private moments, late nights, and early mornings, when you choose to fight for your peace, your purpose, and your future, even when nothing around you is encouraging you to do so. Well, do not confuse being weary with being weak. You can be exhausted and still be powerful. You can cry and still be courageous. You can question everything and still hold on to faith like a lifeline. Bending is not surrender, it is strategy. It's a way of saying, I will not give you the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. It's a way of turning pressure into progress, of converting pain into wisdom, of transforming struggle into fuel. You must act like you were meant to survive, not because you know how everything will work out, but because you understand that the very fact you're still breathing means your story isn't over. You bend not because you are being broken, but because you are being built. This is what becoming unbreakable looks like. Not the absence of difficulty, but the refusal to be defeated by it. There is no shame in falling. But if you're still on the ground, you haven't given yourself the chance to rise. And you were born to rise. You were made with the kind of resilience that can outlast storms, outgrow pain, and outshine the darkest night. You've done it before, whether you remember it or not. You've stood up before with your heart in pieces and your hands shaking. You've smiled through tears. You've loved again after loss. You've hoped again after disappointment. You bent. You adjusted. You adapted. And here you are. Definiteness of purpose is not a vague desire. It is not a wish whispered before sleep or a passing thought on a bad day. It is a deep, burning conviction that you were meant for something more and that nothing will stop you from reaching it. This kind of clarity does not happen by accident. It is forged through reflection, decision, and the courage to commit without apology. Those who move with power in this world are those who know what they want. Not sort of, not maybe one day, but fully, vividly. They wake up with a reason. They walk into every room with intent. They endure hardship with a mindset that says, this too is part of my path. When you operate from definiteness of purpose, you no longer beg life to treat you kindly. You step into it with authority. You no longer ask permission. You declare direction. The world will test your resolve. Every distraction, every detour, every voice that tells you to settle, conform, or play it safe will try to dilute your aim. But purpose has a way of silencing the noise. It acts like an inner compass, keeping you aligned when the winds of doubt try to blow you off course. It doesn't remove the struggle, but it gives meaning to the struggle. It transforms suffering from something senseless into something sacred, an investment in the mission you were born to fulfill. Think about those who accomplish great things, not just in wealth or status, but in personal growth, impact, and legacy. You will find that they are not the most talented or the luckiest. They're the ones who made a decision and never backed down from it. They tied their identity to a mission so tightly that quitting was no longer an option. They didn't entertain 20 different goals. They picked one and poured everything they had into it, because when your energy is scattered, your results are scattered. But when it's focused, it becomes unstoppable. In tough times, this principle matters even more. Chaos has a way of making people forget their direction. Crisis tempts you to abandon your dreams in favor of comfort, to trade your destiny for survival. But definiteness of purpose demands that you hold the vision, even when everything around you is falling apart. Especially then. It is in those moments when you're broken, betrayed, or burdened, that purpose becomes your lifeline. It gives you a reason to keep breathing, keep believing, and keep building, even if brick by brick. It is easy to move confidently when things are going well, but true power comes from holding your direction when life doesn't cooperate. To act as if you were meant to survive tough times is to act as if your purpose matters more than your mood, more than your fear, more than your current limitations. People quit not because they lack talent, but because they lack clarity. They don't know where they're going, so they fall for anything that offers temporary relief. They trade legacy for comfort. But comfort has never built a future worth living in. Purpose does. The definitiveness of purpose demands sacrifice. It demands that you say no to things that don't serve the mission. It forces you to let go of distractions disguised as opportunities. It pushes you to grow, to discipline your thoughts, to refine your habits, and to align every part of your life with the outcome you seek. And in return, it offers you something most people never experience: peace. Not the peace of passivity, but the peace that comes from knowing you're on the right path, even if the road is hard. It gives you resilience. You no longer need to wait for someone else to motivate you. You no longer depend on external conditions to determine your progress. You become driven from within. And when a person is driven from within, they are a force that circumstances cannot stop. They fall down, but they rise faster. They lose, but they learn quicker. They are rejected, but they return stronger, because they are not here to simply exist. They are here to fulfill something only they were designed to do. You will find that when you decide exactly what you want, Life begins to move around that decision. Opportunities that once seemed invisible start to show themselves. People begin to respond to your certainty. Resources that seemed out of reach begin to appear, not because of luck, but because of alignment. Purpose draws power toward it. It creates momentum. It generates movement where before there was stagnation. Now, this is why wandering through life, waiting for the right time, is a lie. The right time is the moment you declare what you're going after and refuse to back down. The right time is when you stop pretending you have forever to decide and start acting like your days are precious. Because they are. The clock is ticking whether you move or not, and every moment spent drifting is a moment lost from your potential. There is nothing noble about hesitation. There is nothing honorable about playing small when you were built for more. There is no power in waiting for permission to pursue the fire that already burns inside you. There is a voice inside you that narrates your life. Every setback, every triumph, every quiet moment of uncertainty. It speaks even when you don't notice it. And in times of hardship, that voice either becomes your most powerful ally or your most destructive critic. What most people fail to realize is this: you can train that voice. You can mold it, sharpen it, strengthen it until it becomes a source of resilience so strong that nothing external can easily shake it. So resilience begins in the mind. Before it shows up in your decisions, before it's seen in your actions, it's born in your internal dialogue. That voice within. What it says to you, how it speaks to you, and what it believes about you will either push you forward or pull you down. Most people don't fail because of what the world says about them. They fail because of what they say to themselves. The most devastating defeats don't happen on the battlefield of life. They happen in the 6 inches between your ears. That's easy to talk like a champion when everything is going well, but the true measure of your inner voice is revealed when things collapse, when plans fail, when betrayal hits, when the path ahead is dark and you are standing alone. That is when your inner voice steps forward. If it is undisciplined, it echoes every fear, every insecurity, every limitation you've absorbed from others. It replays old doubts like a broken record. It whispers things like, "You're not good enough. You always mess things up. Why even try?" And the more you listen, the more those lies feel like truth. But you don't have to accept that voice as final. You don't have to let it run wild. Because here's the truth. Just like you train your body, you can train your inner voice. You can teach it to speak from strength. You can teach it to see setbacks not as a verdict, but as feedback. You can condition it to reject despair and replace it with determination. And when that shift happens, when your inner voice becomes one of leadership rather than victimhood, you become a force that tough times cannot easily defeat. Start by listening. Pay attention to the words you say to yourself when no one else is around. Notice the tone. Is it filled with condemnation or compassion? Is it harsh and final or encouraging and curious? Most of us speak to ourselves in a way we would never speak to a friend. We criticize, we ridicule, we punish ourselves for not being perfect, fast enough, strong enough. That voice didn't appear by accident. It was shaped by past failures, by childhood experiences, by the voices of others who didn't know any better. But now it's your responsibility to take the wheel. To cultivate a voice of resilience, you must first reject the idea that your thoughts are automatic and unchangeable. They are habits, they are patterns, and patterns can be rewritten. Begin by challenging the negative thoughts as soon as they arise. Don't let them go unchecked. If your mind says, "You can't handle this," stop and ask, "Is that true? Have I not handled pain before? Have I not survived worse?" If your mind says, "There's no point in trying," counter with, "What would happen if I did try one more time?" This is not about blind positivity or ignoring pain. It's about choosing the voice of power or the voice of panic. It's about retraining your mental narrative until it becomes aligned with the future you want, not the fear you feel. Speak to yourself like someone who believes you will make it through. Speak with the authority of someone who's already overcome, not just once, but many times. Speak as if it is your job to lead yourself through the storm. That voice must be intentional. You have to feed it daily with truth, with vision, with words that fuel your fight, not your fatigue. Read things that build you up. Surround yourself with people whose words reflect your potential, not just your past. Eliminate toxic inputs, news, conversations, habits that reinforce a mindset of defeat. What you allow into your mind becomes part of your inner vocabulary. Guard that entrance like your life depends on it, because in many ways, it does. One of the greatest powers you can develop is the ability to coach yourself in the moment. When things get hard, when fear kicks in, when pressure mounts, you must be able to access a mental command center that doesn't panic. You must speak to yourself not with anxiety, but with resolve. You must say things like, "This is hard, but I am harder. This will not break me, it will build me. I've done difficult before, and I can do it again." Over time, those phrases become internalized. They become your truth. They become automatic. And when they do, you stop being controlled by circumstance and start being guided by conviction. Resilience is not inherited. It is engineered. It is designed in silence and tested in chaos. It is built in the way you talk to yourself when no one else is cheering. It is the result of thousands of small mental choices, stacked day after day, until the voice inside you no longer doubts your ability to rise. It expects it. It demands it. It commands it. And when that voice becomes louder than anything life throws at you, that is when you truly become unshakable. Fear is one of the most misunderstood forces in the human experience. Most people treat it like a stop sign, a signal that something is wrong and should be avoided at all costs. They run from it, numb it, deny it, or let it paralyze them. But fear, when properly understood, is not your enemy. It is information, it is energy, it is direction. And if you learn how to interpret it correctly, fear becomes not a cage that traps you, but a compass that guides you. Fear shows up where your growth lives. It hovers near the edge of your limits, standing guard at the doorway to your next evolution. When you feel fear, it often means you are brushing up against something meaningful, something that matters, something that could change you. The question isn't whether you feel fear. You will, everyone does. The question is, what do you do when it shows up? Do you shrink, or you listen to music and lean in? The danger is not in fear itself, but in how you interpret it. People assume fear means stop. They associate the pounding heart, the nervous thoughts, the uncertainty as proof that something is wrong. But those same feelings, racing pulse, heightened awareness, quickened breath, are also signs of readiness. Your body is preparing you to perform, to focus, to rise to the occasion. It's not shutting you down, it's firing you up. But if your interpretation is wrong, you'll misread a signal for growth as a sign of danger. Fear can be a cage when you give it authority it does not deserve. When you assume that discomfort equals danger, you stop exploring, you stay safe, stuck, and small. You build walls around yourself, not realizing that the same walls that protect you also imprison you. And over time, your life begins to shrink. You don't take the risk. You don't have the hard conversation. You don't launch the idea, pursue the dream, make the move. You convince yourself that safety is wisdom when really it's often just fear in disguise. But there's another way. You can learn to use fear as a compass. You can flip the script. You can start to ask, why am I afraid of this? What does this fear reveal about where I'm headed? What part of me is being called to grow in this moment? When you begin to do that, you stop letting fear control you, and you start using it to locate your next breakthrough. The truth is, your fear often points in the exact direction you need to go. Afraid to speak on stage? That might mean you have something powerful to say. Nervous about starting a business? That might mean you're ready to bet on yourself. Scared to leave a toxic situation? That might be the sign that freedom is on the other side. The things you fear most are often tied to the deepest parts of your purpose, not because you should avoid them, but because facing them is how you evolve. Fear has a way of revealing where your freedom is trapped. It exposes the limits you've unconsciously placed on yourself, and those limits, left unchallenged, become the invisible boundaries of your life. But every time you move toward what scares you, not recklessly but courageously, you redraw the map of what's possible. You break a mental barrier. You reclaim power that you had unknowingly surrendered. This doesn't mean all fear is to be ignored. Some fears are rational, protective, appropriate. But most of the fear people live with every day is psychological, not physical. It's the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of looking foolish, the fear of not being good enough. These fears are not keeping you alive, they're keeping you average. And they are not based on truth, they are based on imagined outcomes, past experiences, or voices that were never yours to begin with. To use fear as a compass, you must develop a new relationship with it. You must start to welcome it as a teacher rather than reject it as a threat. When fear shows up, let that be your signal to pay attention, not to retreat. Lean into the message behind the emotion. Fear will show you what you care about. It will show you where you still doubt yourself. It will reveal your edges, and in revealing them, it gives you the opportunity to expand them. You must train yourself to move in the direction of your fear, especially when it aligns with your values, your growth, and your dreams. The goal is not to eliminate fear, but to increase your capacity to act in its presence. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the mastery of it. It is the ability to say, yes, I feel afraid, and I'm doing it anyway. That kind of decision builds self-respect, it builds self-trust. And over time, it transforms the way you see yourself and what you believe you're capable of. You must start looking at fear as a signal that you're alive and reaching for something that matters. If you're not afraid, it might mean you're not stretching. If you're never uncomfortable, it might mean you're settling. The most fulfilled people aren't those who avoided fear. They're the ones who made a habit of confronting it. They learned to decode it, to walk with it, to let it lead them to parts of themselves they would have never found by staying safe. Fear, when embraced, becomes fuel. It sharpens your awareness, it forces you to prepare, it humbles you enough to grow, but challenges you enough to rise. It won't go away, but it can be converted, transmuted, rewired into drive. You don't need to feel brave to act. You need to act and let bravery catch up. Pain is the gatekeeper of transformation. It's the uninvited guest that shows up the moment you step beyond what's comfortable, what's easy, what's familiar. Most people fear it, avoid it, and retreat at the first sign of discomfort. But those who achieve greatness, who carve their names into the fabric of history, understand something different. That pain is not the end. It's the threshold. And if you can persist past the point of pain, you begin to access a version of yourself that most will never meet. Pain is a signal, but it is not a stop sign. It's a challenge, a demand, a test. It asks you, how bad do you want this? How deep is your commitment? Will you keep going when everything in you begs to quit? The moment pain enters, the room clears, the crowd thins, the average step back, the casual lose interest, because pain exposes the difference between wishing and willing, between liking the idea of progress and being willing to bleed for it. Everyone wants the reward. Everyone wants the goal. Everyone wants to win, but not everyone is willing to endure. Not everyone is willing to sacrifice. Not everyone is willing to hurt. And so when pain shows up, when the late nights drag on, when the failures pile up, when the support disappears and you're left holding the vision alone. Many give up. They assume pain means they're on the wrong path, when in reality it's often the clearest indicator that they're on the right one. You must train yourself to think differently, to feel pain and not flinch, to experience discomfort and not retreat. You must build a mindset that does not equate struggle with failure, but with forging. Pain is not always punishment. It is process. It is the fire that tempers the steel of your will. It is the resistance that strengthens the muscle of your resolve. When you reach the edge of what you thought you could take and choose to keep moving, you start to separate yourself, not just from others, but from your former self. Most people quit far too early. They stop when it hurts, when it's hard, when they're tired. But pain is not permanent unless you surrender to it. What feels unbearable in the moment is often survivable when broken down into minutes, movements, breaths. What seems insurmountable is usually just unfamiliar. Pain tricks the mind into thinking it will last forever, but it never does. It is a wave that rises and recedes. You can hold on long enough to let it pass. What's waiting on the other side is often breakthrough. Endurance is a decision. It is not a gift you're born with. It is something you cultivate through choice, through repetition, through the constant refusal to let pain define your limits. The first time you persist past pain, it might be small. You finish a set, you complete the task. You keep working through exhaustion. But with each act of defiance against quitting, you teach yourself something critical. I can keep going. I am not at my limit. I am at my beginning. Pain has layers. There's the physical fatigue, the aching, the burning, the weariness that screams for rest. But even more insidious is the mental pain, the doubt, the discouragement, the inner voice that says you're not good enough, that it's not worth it, that you're wasting your time. This mental pain is what defeats most people. It's not the body that breaks, it's the belief. When the voice inside grows louder than the fire in your spirit, you begin to justify quitting. And once you justify it once, it becomes easier the next time. You must counter that voice. You must speak back to it with authority. When it says, I can't, answer with, I will. When it whispers, you've done enough, respond with, I'm just getting started. When it insists, this is too much, declare, this is where I grow. Mastering pain requires mastering your internal dialogue. It requires you to override emotion with intention, reaction with purpose, panic with power. Because in the moments where pain is loudest, you must be louder. There's a version of you that exists on the other side of pain, a stronger, sharper, more focused version, one that sees obstacles not as roadblocks, but as rites of passage. One that knows every moment of struggle is a deposit into your future strength. You don't get stronger by avoiding pain. You get stronger by making it through, by showing up when it hurts, by pushing when everything in you wants to pull back, by standing tall in the fire, knowing you're being forged, not destroyed. You must learn to love the process, not just the prize, to find purpose in the pain, to see it not as the enemy, but the environment in which your potential is shaped. The goal is not to become numb or emotionless, it's to become unbreakable. To be the kind of person who doesn't need it to be easy to keep going, who doesn't need to feel motivated to stay committed. That kind of consistency, past the point of pain, is what produces results others will never touch. The truth is, the deeper the pain, the greater the transformation. The longer you endure, the more you grow. When you persist past the point of pain, you begin to tap into the kind of mental toughness that cannot be taught, only earned. You develop a calm in the storm, a stillness in the pressure, a power that remains when everything else has been stripped away. That is what lies beyond the edge, beyond the quit point, beyond the limit you thought was fine. Adversity is a great equalizer. It visits the strong and the weak, the seasoned and the new, the prepared and the unready. No one escapes his presence. But while most people curse adversity, dread it, and allow it to dictate their pace and power, the few who rise above the rest take a different approach. They don't serve adversity, they study it. They don't submit to it, they listen to it. They make adversity their advisor, not their master. Adversity can either harden or humble you, depending on how you interpret its presence. It doesn't arrive to punish, it arrives to instruct. Its lessons are harsh, yes, but they are pure. Adversity strips away the unnecessary. It burns away the pretense. It reveals the truth, who you are, what you value, and how badly you want what you say you want. There is no hiding when adversity walks in, and that's where its power lies. Because in revealing your raw self, it gives you the opportunity to rebuild from solid ground. The mistake most people make is giving adversity the final word. They face a setback and call it defeat. They encounter failure and label it unworthy. But adversity is not an ending, it is an inquiry, a challenge, a demand for clarity and conviction. It's not there to stop you, it's there to ask, are you sure? Are you sure this matters? Are you sure you're committed? Are you sure you're willing to pay the price? Adversity never takes your dream. It simply tests how much of you is invested in it. The greatest leaders, the fiercest warriors, the most resilient creators in history did not ascend because they avoided adversity. They ascended because they partnered with it. They invited it into their decision-making room, not as a ruler, but as a ruthless teacher. They let adversity ask the hard questions, expose the blind spots, and demand better, not once, not occasionally, but consistently. Because when you make adversity your advisor, you allow it to sharpen you without enslaving you. There is wisdom in adversity if you have the mindset to mine it. Adversity shows you what is real and what is fragile. When the pressure comes, the fake falls away. The undisciplined routine, the shallow motivation, the borrowed ambition, it all cracks under the weight of real challenge. What remains is only what's been forged in purpose. That is what adversity leaves you with, not more confusion, but more clarity. If you listen to it, not worship it. Most people hand over their identity to adversity. They allow a failure to redefine them, a loss to shrink them, a betrayal to embitter them. They wear their wounds like permanent scars instead of using them as proof of survival. They become so consumed by what adversity took from them that they never stop to ask what it offered in return. But if you lean in, if you stop reacting emotionally and start asking strategically, adversity will begin to reveal its gold. It will show you your limits and ask if you're ready to move beyond them. It will show you where your preparation was weak and invite you to strengthen it. It will reveal the parts of you that still rely on ease, applause, validation, and push you to find power in solitude, in silence, in sheer effort. Adversity doesn't care about your image. It's not impressed by your resume. It speaks only one language, truth. And if you're willing to listen, it will refine you into someone unstoppable. But this only happens if you refuse to be mastered by it, if you don't give it control. Adversity is a messenger, not a monarch. It belongs in the war room, not the throne. Let it sit at your table, but do not let it lead your life. Because when you become a servant of adversity, you become reactive, defensive, paralyzed. You wait for the world to shift in your favor before you take action. You live in fear of the next storm, the next blow, the next moment of chaos. But when you make adversity your advisor, you become proactive. You anticipate the resistance, you build for the breakdowns, you expect things to go wrong, and when they do, you already have a plan. You respond with wisdom, not panic. You adapt with speed, not sorrow. You're no longer surprised by challenge because you've learned to translate it. You see what others miss. That adversity is just part of the process. Pure power is learning how to stand in adversity without absorbing its poison, to walk through fire without becoming bitter, to be hurt without becoming hardened. When you make adversity your advisor, you build emotional distance from it. You still feel the sting, but you also step back and ask, what is this here to teach me? That single question transforms adversity from a tormentor into a tool. It moves you from victim to strategist, from survivor to builder, from fighter to architect. And that shift, small in appearance, massive in effect, is what separates those who barely recover from those who rise stronger. Because adversity will visit everyone, but how you host it determines what happens next. Most allow it to take over the house, rearrange the furniture, change the rules, and tell them who they are. But the few, the rare few, greet it with discipline. They extract the insight, they adjust, they grow. And then they move forward with more clarity, more grit, more fire than ever before.